Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first session in our three-part fireside chat series, proudly brought to you by Striving and Acorn. My name is Victoria Hammond from the Striving team, and I'll be your moderator across the series. I'm really excited to kick things off with today's conversation and welcome you to this live event. So this series, it's all about building a future-ready workforce through capability-driven thinking. So across the next three chats, we'll be diving into a couple of key topics. So the first one's laying the foundation. So looking at capability-driven workforce planning. Second session is about aligning learning with impact. So building capability through everyday work. And then finally, looking at future-proofing your workforce. So looking at that capability-based retention and succession planning. Today's session is focused on laying those foundations and how capability frameworks are reshaping hiring, onboarding, and workforce planning. And I couldn't think of two better guests to help us unpack this than our panelists today. So we're lucky enough to be joined by Eloise Littlejohns, who is the Director of Operations and People at Acorn, and Hassanah Rudd, who is Head of People and Culture at Hark Medical. So both Hassanah and Eloise bring a wealth of experience in people strategy, capability design, and scaling learning in fast-moving organizations. So we be able to really tap into that in today's discussion. So before we dive in, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. So we're streaming live here on LinkedIn. So if you're watching live, please feel free to say hi, let us know where you're dialing in from, and drop your comments in the chat throughout the session. And we'll try and get to them as we go. We'll leave some time for Q&A at the end, but feel free to engage in the discussion if thoughts come up, and we'll try and pick up your questions along the way if it works. And don't worry if you have to duck out early or drop off. The recording of the event will be available as soon as we finish. I think that's enough from me. Alrighty, I'll hand over to you, Eloise, to kick things off.
Amazing. Thanks, Vic. Hi, everybody. As Vic mentioned, I'm Eloise and I'm the Director of Operations and People at Acorn. So I look after everything across the business operationally and also from a people perspective. And I have the great pleasure of working with Acorn and rolling that out consistently in our workforce. Acorn is a performance and learning management system, and we are all about the capabilities. So we use our platform to break down the key capabilities that everybody needs to do their roles and then link that into the learning to make sure that they're upskilled and that they've got the capability needed to succeed. It's a super exciting space and loads to get into, and I'm delighted that we are looking after this next three-part webinar series and that I'm joined today by Hassanah Rudd, who is a fantastic person to be having this conversation with today and a hugely meaty topic, so I can't wait to get into it with you today, Hassanah. Do you want to just kick off and give yourself a quick intro and then we'll dive into the questions?
Oh, fast, why have I not? So yeah, I've come from a background, a bit of everything really, a jack of all trades, possibly master of none, deep within TA into sort of head of talent, head of people. I spent recently 2.5 years at Canvas standing up workforce planning and seeing them go from 3,200 to 5,300. So that was a bit intense on that type of swirl, getting everything into place for them. And then, yeah, I'm currently helping with a fabulous startup based in Melbourne, Hark Medical, who produce the most incredible product that actually ensures excellent keeping people healthier longer with making sure that their medication is on time, timely, everybody's compliant around it, people can stay in their homes longer. It is very cool. So I'm doing all the things, like all of the things around the people, which is just a really exciting space. Yeah, I'm really excited about this today, and Eloise knows much more than I do. So when they said two of them, they really meant her, not me, but it would be cool. I can make stuff more.
That's not true at all, but yeah, and I absolutely love that you've had that experience of scaling this in a really large organization, and then also that experience of going smaller and thinking about it at that more individual level as well. So yeah, thank you for joining me here today. So let's dive into our questions, and let's maybe start broadly. Why do you think that we're seeing a shift from focusing on skills more towards capabilities when it comes to workforce planning?
It's an interesting one, that. And I also reflected on that. It's a reflection as well in terms of how people think about skills, because there's been times in the past when I've talked about, people talk about skill-based hiring, to find out that everyone's, oh no, we're doing it more on capabilities. And what they've actually done is removed qualifications from their job descriptions, which wasn't actually what I was thinking of in terms of skills. I think it's that sort of realization that skills really is that skills, when you think about it, is that technical know-how for specific tasks, that mastery of task, but the capabilities basically ensure that everybody's can adapt to manage within complex organizations as well. So you might be excellent at this, but if you haven't got in your role as a leader really good capabilities around leadership, things aren't going to go how it should be and the company's not going to be able to perform. So I think there's that more realization. You actually have to have that holistic aspect to be able to drive that. And it isn't just that, it's also around how do people define their careers? How do you ensure that they're growing? How do you ensure that you're getting the right learning to them when you're basing it around capabilities is much stronger? How do you therefore then do performance management if you've not got it based around capabilities? So I think there's just much more of a mix now where people are like stretching out beyond that little thing, which, talking of which, I think it's that aspect of being in more of the whole person in the organization, be able to do it a bit better. That makes sense. But I'm going to flip it back on you, Eloise, on this one, and ask is, because of all of your great experience and the organization, it's for your end, can you walk us through what a capability framework actually looks like in practice and how that differs from like the traditional skills matrix everybody thinks about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've touched on it perfectly there. The skills are more that sort of technical knowledge, but the capability is more that strategic, linking it more to those strategic outcomes, and also thinking about the ability to execute on that capability. So thinking it's the skills, the knowledge and the behavior all kind of linked together, and also linking that capability more towards business outcomes. So there are a much more strategic set of objectives that people are working towards, rather than a kind of disparate number of 25 skills that they're expecting to deliver on. So in terms of capability frameworks, they tend to be grouped into different categories with different levels of proficiency. So examples of this could be something like leadership, communication, digital, project delivery. And then typically you would have different levels of proficiency. So against each of those capabilities, you'd have in communication, you might have a foundational level of proficiency against that, moving up into more of the advanced. And it provides a really clear sort of structure or scorecard of what people are expected to be able to deliver in their role. You can also include behavioral indicators. So that might be an example of how somebody's actually applying that in action. And capability frameworks are really great for things like succession planning, talent development, role design. What we're seeing at Acorn, and what I got really excited about when I joined Acorn as the head of people, was how we can use capabilities as that linking thread across everything that we're doing from a people perspective. So we've now embedded our capability frameworks into our hiring process. So for every different role, we use our Acorn platform to break down the key capabilities that anybody needs to do their role. And everybody has 5. Managers and leaders have 1 extra management or leadership capability assigned to them. But I can very clearly in the job description go out to people and say, these are the 5 capabilities and these are the levels of proficiency that I'm looking for, which is really helpful because it helps me work with the hiring managers to understand what levels of proficiency these people need to be performing on. And actually you can prioritize. So I've got a role live at the moment for a people experience manager. Side note, if anybody knows anybody fantastic, reach out to me on LinkedIn. But I went through and could prioritize which areas I wanted to put more emphasis on, versus actually if somebody's more foundational or developing in one of these areas, that's okay. And we can look at how we can put learning and development in for there. So I guess in summary, the capability frameworks are that much more kind of strategic look at things, whereas skills matrices tend to be used for that more sort of operational type workforce planning. It might be that you need somebody with amazing Excel skills and you can loop into your organization, find somebody with that and get them onto the project in a kind of immediate term, but you're not going to get much strategic benefit or business outcomes from just looking at kind of Excel skills on that really granular level.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's funny actually, because you can go, oh, here's your capabilities. And there can also be, what I've seen in the past is some of the challenges around people getting a bit carried away, and less is more here, people, because the bigger that gets, it just becomes meaningless after a while. Like everybody goes, oh, we need to put that in and we need to put that in. And it's actually just making sure you're really clear about that it's a handful that people could roll them off the top. Similarly to like visions, values, you'd be able to roll them really quickly without going, hang on a minute, I think we've got 13 and remember 1. of them.
Yeah, and it's so easy to do. People are like, oh, we'll just put another one in. We'll just put another one in. And that's, again, why I was thinking about it at Acorn, and we generally advise our clients, like 5 is a great number. Yeah. It's easy, it's memorable. When people are looking at how they're performing, it's like a much sort of easier way to break down the role. And also it's really interesting to see how our AI tool breaks it down to those capabilities. Like, it doesn't necessarily always group the capabilities in the way that you might have thought they would. And so, I think I completely agree. It just makes it that much easier and gives people much more clarity.
Yeah, it makes it nice on that one. And I think that's the part of where you go, all right, now you can design around this. Can be definitely done. And then everybody goes, and how do we embed that now? Like, how do we actually roll that out? Because that, and then actually putting that into, like, embedding the capabilities frameworks into sort of hiring or onboarding, that's where you can get a bit stuck in there. What are the biggest challenges you've faced in terms of trying to embed that into the onboarding and the hiring?
Yeah, again, a great question. We actually, at a lot of our kind of conferences or events, one of the things we do is go out to the audiences and say, who's got a capability framework in their organization? And quite a lot of people tend to put their hands up. And then we ask, how's that going and how embedded is it? Keep your hand up if you're working it and using it in a day-to-day basis. And the majority of hands will immediately go down. Really, really difficult. And I think that's why, kind of, as I was explaining before, using it as that linking layer and actually really embedding it across everything that you're doing from the people experience is really important. That starts exactly from the job role description, looking across your workforce and doing that strategic business lens of what roles do we think we're going to need over the next couple of years, and then thinking about, of those roles, what capabilities do we need, and then breaking that down then into the job that you're then hiring for can be a really good way to make it very clear what level and capability you're expecting your people to be demonstrating as part of the interview process. You can also really link it in. So use that as your criteria for developing the interview questions, have a capability-based interview. One of our clients actually uses a capability assessment in their interviews. At Acorn, the idea is that you have your 5 key capabilities, and then period, depending on the organization, potentially every 3 months, you sit down and do a capability assessment where you assess yourself, and your manager then assesses how you're actually performing, which you can then compare, understand where there are some gaps between the manager and employee expectations. And then, so one of our clients actually does this as part of their recruitment process. So even before the person's got in through the door, they've got a really good understanding of what level of capability. People are all really different, and people have got different strengths. You might have 2 amazing candidates. One's much stronger in one capability than the other, and that really helps the hiring manager when you're designing that onboarding experience to then think, okay, what sort of learning and development does that need to look like, whether that's a formal learning intervention or whether it might be more coaching, pairing them up with somebody in the organization that's really good at that capability, etc. There's lots of things you can do around that. It's also really important from a career progression perspective. So again, if you're thinking about your job architecture in terms of your overall workforce planning, thinking about how you can link that job architecture, the capabilities and the career progression all together, and make it really visible for people around what those career trajectories can look like. And what's really nice about having visibility of the capabilities, it doesn't necessarily need to be a linear career path anymore. It's not just the progress and become a senior whatever or a director in whatever the discipline or the job family is. You've actually got that mobility, and that's pervasive across organizations now. People no longer want just that linear career path. They want to go and try different things and build their skills in different areas. So I'd probably say it's the most important thing is just to make sure it's embedded in everything that you do, using it as that linking thread. And that's something that we're really seeing a lot of success with at Acorn. And when we're going out and speaking to our clients as well, that's kind of what we're recommending.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to go. And it's also not, to a point, there's a level of don't overthink it, people. Like, you can MVP this, like you can test and learn within certain areas. If you want to take a segment of your workforce and go, this is an area where we've got various struggles for whatever that looks like, let's build it around there and see how that goes, so that you can get some traction in early without feeling like you're having to present and deliver on this massive, huge piece of work that can become all scary.
For sure. But yeah, I'd love to pick your brains and hear your thoughts on, you've obviously worked in very large organizations and then much smaller ones. How, from your perspective, how do leaders gain real visibility of capability gaps across their teams and functions? And I guess particularly in a high growth type of environment, how did you navigate that? And what were some of the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, I'd love to say I had like great tech tooling like Acorn available at the time, but I did not. A lot of times everything gets built out onto the world's most used tool of Excel spreadsheets and Google Sheets on those areas. But it was also the starting points to be able to actually say, who are our people and what are our skills and capabilities? What do we have? And generally, if you have leaders like, I like Bob and Jane's doing well, and it's actually trying to be able to expose that becomes not impossible, but a little bit more difficult. In the past, one of the things I've done, which I actually really enjoyed doing, it was in a startup, it was about 300, 400 people. And we didn't have job descriptions, we had signposts, and they were visible to absolutely everybody. So every single role had a signpost on it, which was like, it was the skills, but also the capabilities. It was like the questions this role can answer, and what this role's delivering on, and everybody could see them, which meant that if you were, say, a junior data scientist, you could see what's expected of you, and then you could see, if I want promotion, this is what's expected of me here. So there was a level where we could expose our capability expectations within the organization. And then when we were going into like being able to look at that on a framework of performance and being able to do that, we tied that all together. So we tied that together, and we like also synced in with the values to mush that together enough to get, this is the framework. And then we developed our own questionnaires to be able to actually put that out and then put those things into play. This is the case. It was like build it as we need it for a particular organization. Wherever you are, each of those places are going to be different to it. And yeah, I would have loved to have had the aspect of the tooling to it, but you can do this without, if you absolutely get stuck and have to. Recommend not.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Amazing to have the visibility of that data. I guess I was really interested. Do you think that, I love that concept of that kind of signposting. Do you think that helped with career mobility? Because again, what we often speak to clients about is they basically say that it's easier for people to leave the organization rather than figure out where they can go internally. Did that sort of having that capability-led approach help with some of that career mobility?
Yeah, without a doubt, because it also meant that where people maybe are wanting to go sideways or they wanted to progress on a different route, they could then look at like the signpost of those routes and go, okay, these are the things I'm matching here. Okay, now let's the secondary conversation that, was with the leaders was that, okay, now it's the career conversations of where do you want to go and what's the gap and how do we help you get there? So it helped give visibility to be able to build the bridge over it. And then again, it was that test and learn what's working, what's not working, that helped people to move in more sideways. And I've seen this a lot in the past as where people automatically assume that career pathing and that progression has to be around a leadership route. And we've all got the experience of where that is not necessarily a good call for some people. Yeah. And then I've also in the past had to go, okay, let's get you out of that track and back into an individual contributor. And let's unpack why you thought that was a good call in the first place. So it's also that clarity lens of, is this where you need to go, or is it a strong individual contributor route? And that there is huge value in that, to be clear about that as well, and that there's different learnings to it. But having that down just gave that visibility. It was like a foundational piece that we could then go, what's the learning programs we need to put on top of this? Like where have we got the gaps on it? So it helped. It was just a way of being able to give something that gave visibility, and everybody quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, I love that. And part of what I love about the people space is how all interlinked and interwoven it all is. You make a change here and actually it impacts all this other stuff, which I love. Makes my brain explode sometimes.
I know, it's like where you go, I've got all these things, little stuff, like breaking those rocks down is always a thing. For your end, like where have you seen like the capability frameworks, like really having that positive talent development conversations and seeing that progression piece? Because you've got better
Yeah, I'll talk about what we do at Acorn. Again, because it's our product, we're really keen to dog food and use that internally. So we've rolled that out consistently across our business. Everybody has the 5 key capabilities. And at the moment, everybody sits down every 6 weeks to do their development conversations with their manager. So they sit down and they complete their own self-assessment about how they're performing against those 5 key capabilities. And then the manager will rate them. And then they meet up and talk about that, where the expectation gaps are, have a really positive development focused conversation, think about career planning, what that might look like, etc. And we've had some amazing examples of where people have reskilled or cross-skilled into other areas. We had one of the members of our design team wanted to specialize in becoming a product designer, and the missing part of the capability set was UX research. So she went and completed a course, could demonstrate that she'd upskilled herself in that proficiency, and then moved across into that area. We've also had some really nice examples of where somebody along their proficiency levels has been able to demonstrate that they've moved from that sort of foundational or developing skill set more into the proficient skill set, which resulted in them getting a promotion. And again, when we're talking about some of those promotion decisions, we've got real clear criteria to say, actually, this is why we're making this promotion. And yeah, it's a real good news story. We also, being a fast-paced startup, we've got lots of people who are really hungry and really career driven and want to experience lots of different things. And one of the amazing things is that because we're expanding so quickly, people have got those options to go and do some other roles. And in the last 6 weeks, I've been working with 6 different people across the business that are moving into different roles. And again, one of the really things that makes my life really easier as a head of people is I send them the new capability set for their new role and say, this is now what we're expecting you to demonstrate against, thinking about what learning and development we're putting in place to support them. Again, not necessarily that formal learning intervention, but more of that on the job learning, making sure their managers are giving that time to them to coach them into these new roles. And I think it's just making it really clear about the clarity of the expectations. So they're very clear on what it is that they need to be delivering on. And also having that kind of forward thinking and positive mindset to it, like it's totally okay if people are foundational or developing, that's to be expected, but that it's on them and on the managers and on us in the people space to give them those opportunities and help train them as well.
Yeah, I tell you what I really like about that is because of like how often you do it. Like if you think about most frameworks, you know, that sort of like performance first is if you're lucky, it's twice a year, most it's once a year, and everybody walks into those in terror and everybody now, I mean, you might as well just get the bots to talk to one another because everybody's sort of in ChatGPT and do the same on a response. It's like, what value are you actually adding?
Yeah.
And people are always still a bit nervous going into those meetings because you're not really sure, no matter how many times as a people professionals, we can say nobody should be shocked walking into those meetings.
Yeah.
We've all dealt with people coming out ashen face going, I was not expecting that.
Yeah.
And it's so far in between, people can feel lost in there. So I actually really like that. It's like it takes the fear factor out of it. I like that.
And it shouldn't be fearful. It should be something that's really positive. Make the time and space to have those career-focused conversations. Who wouldn't want to be given feedback in a more kind of real-time aspect? But also, approach it with that positive intent of, there are absolutely development areas, but also like you're doing amazingly in this area, thinking about how we can spotlight some of that, celebrate the successes. And I think even moving away from people thinking it's like that assessment, but more to that development-focused conversation, like even just flicking that mindset can really change how people approach them. And actually, if you said to people, do you want to sit down every 6 weeks and have a positive development conversation with your manager, the majority of people would say yes. Absolutely, some people don't want to do that, and that's fine, but I think most people would jump at the chance. And even for me, like I sit down with our CEO every 6 weeks and talk about it, and I find it incredibly valuable time away from the day job to really focus on what those development and strategic areas are.
Yeah, that type of ritual is pretty gold standard because you have your one-on-ones and it's what are you working on this week and how can I help you? But actually cutting the time that's going, okay, where are we at and where are we on your career path and where does this look like is so cool. It is so cool and so rare as well to actually have that in there. It's a big thing. So where were you all these years ago?
I know. We're here now. Vic, I'm wondering, do we want to jump? I don't know if we can see any of the questions that have come through.
Yes. It's perfect timing, actually. I was just about to bring my face onto stage. So we do have a couple of questions that have come through from the live audience. So I'll pop some of those up there. So the first one we've got, I'll put it on the screen here, is what advice would you give to someone just getting started with building a capability framework?
Go on, Eloise.
I'm happy to take this one. So I guess it depends at what stage you're at in building it. We, again, from an Acorn perspective, one of the great things that we've had is the ability to really apply our capability framework to Acorn. So thinking about how we've used an AI model to plug in things like our tone of voice, our job descriptions, our org chart, to really build out what that capability framework looks like specifically for Acorn, which is really helpful to really contextualize it to our organization. Again, thinking about AI now is amazing and can really help you do this at scale. So think about how you're using this. We, on our website, have a free capability assistant where you can go and plug in your job roles, give a bit of information about your organization, and it'll spit you out a capability set for specific roles. So you could go and have a play around with that and have a look at it if that's helpful. And then I think the other really key point, which Hassanah and I touched on earlier, is just how you really embed that into what you're doing. So don't have a capability framework off to the side, you never look at it. Think about how you can link that into all of your existing processes and structure. So how are you using that in your hiring? How are you using that in your onboarding? What does that look like linking to your learning? Are you taking the capabilities that people need to do and assigning learning against that, and just basically use it as that kind of linking thread across everything that you're doing, which will really help with the adoption. So I don't know if you've got any other points to add there.
I was just going to say that, again, it's also depending on size of organization. Don't feel you have to eat the elephant all in one go. Pick a job family grouping where you know that this is going to be useful and valuable and relatively easy with which to be able to put something around, because there's generally like a clear structural career path that may go there, and sort of title taxonomies or job architecture. Use them as the trialer. Get them on board to trial it out if you need to. And look, the other one as well is if you're struggling to go, what are our capabilities? Because it doesn't necessarily, because everybody will go, again, you'll go from, I think it's these 5 and suddenly you've got 30 because everybody's got an opinion about it. The other way you could as well take it from whatever you've got on terms of your mission, because it's all got to line up to mission and sort of delivery about the goals. And then values is actually go, if this is this, what does that look like if I flip that as a capability? If these are where we need to go, what does that look like as a capability? And just get some design going. And I would highly recommend no more, as Eloise is saying, no more than 5.
Yeah. I love that. I think especially when it comes to capabilities, often the hardest thing is starting, right? It can be a bit overwhelming with knowing how to start, where to start. So looking at, okay, what business unit could this work for? And how do we actually just start really small, play around with it a bit, and then obviously look at, Eloise, what you're saying, how do you then tie it into all of your business processes and it becomes something that's so completely ingrained in the business. So really love those points. I've actually got another couple of questions that have come through, so hopefully we can get through them all. I'll put the next one up, another advice-based question. So it looks like some people are looking for some help on how to get things going. So this one's, what advice do you have for convincing skeptical senior business leaders in startups of the value of creating a capability framework early?
You've got to anchor them back on what is it that the company wants to deliver in the next 24 months, if you're lucky. Depending on stage of startup, most, because it's fast-paced, stuff's changing, they're pivoting all the time. It could be in that next 12 months, but it's like, what is it that they want to deliver in 12 months? Like, it needs to anchor them there, because it really doesn't matter what product you've got, whether that's hardware, whether that's software, whatever that looks like, it's all around the people that deliver that. So your actual strength is in the people to deliver the strategic goal that you want to actually get X amount on rev line, whatever that looks like. So you've got to start there and work it backwards, because that then anchors them about why you're doing this. The other part is, particularly in the early startup phase, it's where you might have fragile structures and they don't recognize it. So you could have some really capable people in leadership, and below them is like a gap a mile wide in terms of bench strength. So you can show that up and go, you've got a fragile structure here. If Bob got hit by a bus tomorrow, God forbid, Yeah, we have critical risk. We will get rid of critical risk by having a good capabilities framework that then supports us knowing who our people are and how we bring them up. So there's a little level around this, because I'm really terrible, but it's play to the fear on some specs, is actually highlight this is your risk. So you're not seeing this as a risk, but this is a risk. Yeah, it's a people risk that would be sitting on a risk register at this point in time because you're missing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I'd probably just add also, linking it back to that overall business strategic piece, thinking about how having a capability framework can help with engagement. It can help people understand what their career progression looks like. It can help with that mobility. It can help with that retention. Like, especially in a small startup, people walk out of the business, they take all of that knowledge with them, and it's really hard to train people up. So thinking about it from a real retention side of things. And then also from a startup space, so we are scaling our business considerably over the next few years, but particularly over the next kind of few months. And I'm using this as a real grounding piece to really get the foundations right so that we can go much faster, making it really clear that people have 5 key capabilities. I'm looking at how I can map that directly into our job architecture, how I can provide that career progression visibility to people, how I can map salary bands to those jobs at those proficiency levels, and just basically use it as a kind of a framework to anchor your people processes around. And thinking about, it's actually easier to do it when you're small, because things like implementing that job architecture and looking at workforce planning is easier with smaller businesses. So taking the time to do that now, lay those foundations correctly, and then you'll be in a really good place to scale.
I couldn't say that hallelujah to all what you've just said. It's also, from that workforce planning point of view, it's like you want to be here in like 18 months or whatever that looks like. And we're here right now. A capability framework will show you the gaps you've got in terms of where your people need to be. It'll show you, do you have enough people that we're going to be ready to move into leadership roles? Or do you have like early careers leaders reporting to early careers leaders? And have you got everybody in the biggest job of their lives? Like how do we actually put in around that? It ensures that the company can deliver on that on a workforce planning point of view and enables you to see the gaps.
Yeah, such a powerful strategic driver, I think. And I feel like that's such an easy way to angle it from the conversation. We've probably got time for 1 or 2 more questions. So we've got one more that's come through. And then for anyone else that's listening on the live audience, if you've got a burning question, post it in and we might have time to get to it. If not, you can still add it in the comments and we'll be able to get to it. So this one is more around the recruitment side of things. So do you have any particular assessment providers that you'd recommend for capability assessment when it comes to the recruitment processes?
Oh, good question. Eloise?
So it would be using Acorn. So using us as rolling it out as a business, but then using that as part of the recruitment process internally would be how we would do it. So using the Acorn platform, you can ask candidates to do like a self-assessment. And then also when they arrive for the manager, or even the hiring managers, when they're conducting those interviews, could score them against what they think that capability set looks like. But in terms of other people more specifically in that recruitment space, I don't know that I'd be able to advise. Hassanah, have you come across anything? I know we were having a lively chat about ATSs yesterday.
Oh, God, yeah. She says being back in Excel spreadsheets, but that's absolutely okay. It's because it's like startup land and we love it. Yeah. I think this is the case. If you've got an ATS in play, have a look and see what you've got fed into that at any stage in that process. You don't want to put too much friction in a recruiting process and end up turning somebody off that you want to actually get through that funnel. But at what point have you got something in there that's giving you an ability to look at this as well? Again, it's also putting that lens over like your job ads and making sure that they speak to this and a reflection of your job, like they're not like your job description bullet points up there. So I'd say it is that aspect of being able to like leverage what you can on ATS. And look, chances are that most of the more modern day providers are thinking about this now anyway. So it's not a bad thing to go back to your account managers and go, hey, what have you got? Have you got something that would be useful for us to turn off with little cost?
Yeah, I think great points across the board. I think we're almost at time, to be honest. I feel like it's just absolutely flown through this morning. So many, I think from my perspective, a couple of key things that really jumped out. I think The key thing is just capability is such a strategic driver. I think how you can use this for increasing visibility, increasing your ability to actually link to those business goals, and using that as a way to introduce it to your businesses is something that definitely stuck with me. Maybe a question to you both before we wrap up. Is there any final thoughts that you want to share, or anything that you want people to walk away with at the end of today's session before we close up?
I would say, look, I think the walk away is just get started. Don't over feel that you need to deliver on the world. Find a little area that you can do some testing with and work it from there. It makes it much more safer than having to try and roll that out as a company wide if you're up over a certain number.
Yeah, and then for me, probably just that capabilities and capability frameworks can be that amazing linking thread. You can use that to really embed everything and kind of sew everything you're doing from a people perspective together in a really nice way. And of course, if anybody wants to have a chat about Acorn, please reach out to us or contact us via our website. Because yeah, we, as you can tell, we are pretty passionate about this and think that it can be done so much better, and there's so much potential here to kind of really transform the work experience for people. Yeah, we'd love to have a chat if you're interested.
Absolutely. I can definitely vouch for that as well. So thank you so much. That actually brings us to the end of today's session. Huge thank you to Hassanah and Eloise for sharing your thoughts, your insights, your experience around capability-driven workforce planning. We hope everyone's walking away with some fresh ideas and some practical steps to start or strengthen your capability frameworks. And as Eloise mentioned, if you want to find out more information about Acorn, definitely reach out. Or if you have other questions, feel free to post them in the comments and we'll definitely be able to get to them for you. So a little plug now, that was just the beginning of our Striving and Acorn fireside chat series. Make sure you join us for part 2, Aligning Learning and Impact. So building capability through everyday work. That's on the 5th of June. We'll explore how to embed capability development into the flow of work and link learning directly to business outcomes. I'll post the comment now. There'll be more details and links in the comment section. But otherwise, thank you all for joining, and we'll see you in the next one.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.